Observe a typical, everyday street corner. People standing, sitting, waiting. It looks entirely ordinary. But look closer at a specific common behavior. A person squatting, rhythmically eating sunflower seeds. Take the seed, crack the shell, extract the kernel, spit the waste. It is a precise mechanical loop, repeated hundreds of times an hour. This is chronophagia, the systematic destruction of time. It is a cargo cult of pseudo-activity. This schematic isolates the sequence. Hands move, jaws engage, attention is occupied. It provides a sensation of busyness with zero output. This loop transitions into digital environments. Scroll, pause, swipe. Bet, spin, lose. The rhythm remains the same. These behaviors are neurobiologically expensive simulations of productivity. They are engineered by the brain to solve a terrifying problem, the absolute emptiness of an unassigned consciousness. A single cycle of cracking a seed takes about 10 seconds. A standard cup requires 30 minutes of continuous attention. A typical session of this behavior, or its scrolling equivalent, easily lasts 3 hours a day. Scale that daily expenditure across a 40-year adult lifespan. 3 hours a day compounds into over 43,000 hours. That is nearly 5 full years of continuous waking life consumed by empty rituals. This chart compares cumulative loss against cognitive milestones. Professional fluency in a language takes 1,200 hours. Chronophagia burns enough time for fluency in 35 languages. If 10 million people do this daily, a demographic burns 10 billion human hours yearly. Constructing the Great Pyramid of Giza required an estimated 20 million human hours. 16 months of this collective idleness equals the temporal resources required to build a structure that has outlasted civilizations. The entire Apollo program, from the theoretical math to the physical moonwalk, required approximately 400,000 human years of labor. We possess those exact same temporal resources today. Killing time is a mathematical catastrophe. It strips the species of the raw temporal energy necessary to execute the next civilizational leap. When the human brain is not assigned to a specific, demanding task, it activates the default mode network. In the absence of external stimulus, the brain defaults to self-referential thought. You are forced to look at your own life. For an individual living without a profound, organizing purpose, this silence is excruciating. Jean-Paul Sartre described this acute confrontation with an empty consciousness as existential nausea. Animal behavioral science shows us exactly how biological systems handle this distress. When an organism is placed in a cognitively deprived environment, it develops stereotypy. Captive bears rock back and forth. Elephants sway. They create a rhythmic motor loop to simulate control over an empty space. The human chronophagic loop functions identically. The physical rhythm quiets the brain's Brett detection center, the amygdala, numbing the mind and blocking the silence without resolving the core emptiness. These repetitive leisure behaviors function exactly as basic animalistic coping mechanisms used to survive an unmanaged, empty consciousness. Escaping into these loops reconfigures the brain's reward circuitry. Every cracked seed, every digital like, and every winning spin delivers a tiny, immediate micro-reward, creating a relentless flood of dopamine. Looking at this model of the nucleus accumbens, we see the physiological cost. Confronted with cheap dopamine hits, the brain shrinks its receptor sites. With degraded receptors, signals from high-yield tasks barely register. The willpower required for difficult tasks vanishes. This chemical degradation explains advanced forms of chronophagia, like obsessive sports fandom or relentless celebrity gossip. These are mechanisms of proxy agency. You experience the adrenaline of a championship victory or the reward of a social takedown entirely through the actions of others. The brain harvests the chemical payoff without exposing you to the effort or risk required to achieve anything yourself. These systems do not offer relaxation. They actively degrade the mind's chemical capacity to pursue actualized #expulse. Thorstein Veblen originally identified conspicuous leisure as a marker of the elite. Today, that concept has inverted. Public idleness has become a marker of identity for peer groups defined by their rejection of productive norms. This is rooted in Habitus, In environments defined by chronic instability, time ceases to be an investment and becomes a substrate of waiting. You kill time because time offers no perceived path to a different outcome. This network graph visualizes how Habitus creates a trap. Shared rituals function as social glue, locking the individual into a low-yield regime. If someone attempts to invest their time, they face an immediate social penalty, marked as a defector. Escaping the chronophagic cargo cult requires more than willpower. It requires the ontological courage to sever a toxic identity. Breaking out requires listening to the signal we spend our lives avoiding: conscience. Stripped of moralistic baggage, conscience is a neurobiological navigational system. The anterior cingulate cortex functions as an error monitoring dashboard. It calculates the mismatch between your idle behavior and your higher potential. When we apply anesthetics like alcohol or infinite scrolling, we merely mute the alarms. The mismatch persists. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl understood this signal. Suffering from an unlived life is not a pathology. It is the healthy reaction of a rational being detecting a structural flaw in its existence. Chronic apathy and anxiety are often the brain's amplified distress signals, protesting a squandered existence. The first step toward a different trajectory is ruthless honesty. You must acknowledge the volume of time and cognitive energy lost to empty rituals. The human brain's architecture is not fixed. The principle of Hebbian learning, neurons that fire together wire together, provides the biological mechanism required to overwrite chronophagic habits. Only sustained, delayed reward action can force the brain to abandon fragile, low-yield connections and forge pathways capable of deep focus. This disciplined act of self-creation aligns with the oldest ethical imperatives of human civilization. In Zoroastrian tradition, the universe is a battleground between Asha, creative order, and Druj, entropic decay. Every disciplined effort is a strike against entropy. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky argued that humanity is not a finished product. We are a biological draft with the explicit duty to direct our own evolution and eventually leave the cradle of our origins. Friedrich Nietzsche framed this as the ultimate choice of the will. To intentionally numb the mind with empty cycles is to embrace decay while still breathing. Time is the only non-renewable resource we possess. How we allocate it determines whether we act as an evolutionary filter or an evolutionary bridge. Each hour surrendered to chronophagia is a vote for civilizational stasis. Each hour invested in growth is a rejection of our primitive constraints. We are the architects of our neural architecture. The choice is to either engineer an ascent or dissolve into the background noise of the universe.